friends, so we are going to be doing some illustrations today based on the things you guys are finding at the beach or near the ocean, and I wanted to show you a few of my favorite pieces. I think these are all store-bought, but I wanted to give you some variety for your project. And if you notice, all of these are kind of like white, so on the white background they don't really pop, so we're going to use colored paper today. But let's get started with this fun project. A little bit of a marine biology study and just the study of all these cool little shapes and textures that you can find at the beach. Okay, so for today's lesson, you're going to need colored paper. So you could do like brown paper or even like the back. I know this is kind of silly, but even the back of like your watercolor notebooks or things like that, sometimes those are really good textures because of the brown. It's like craft paper texture. So you could use that. You could use colored paper if you guys have. We just want to avoid white. If you can avoid white, that's going to be better because I'm going to use white colored pencils or light cream colored pencils, and that's going to make the illustration pop off of the darker color paper. So if you have those options, great. If not, we can do it with white. It's just not going to pop as much. White on white isn't going to have that same experience. So ideally, you could use that. If you don't have any colored paper, another thing you could do is like cut up a Trader Joe's bag, paper bags, things like that, that would have a little bit darker brownish color, and that's going to be like the sand, right? So that's how we see the shells when they're out in nature, is we see like, oh, there they are, there's a white thing on the brown sand. So it's going to also reinforce that part of our experience. So if you have that, great. Otherwise, let's just get some colored pencils and get started, okay? Okay, so we are going to start with our darker colored paper. Any paper will do. If you have like a blue or a brown, that's great. If not, you can use, like I said, paper bag from like Trader Joe's, something like that, where you can just cut out a shape and you're just going to be studying it with that as your background. We're also going to be using some pinks, maybe some like light grays. I don't know if you have all these colors, but if you don't, that's fine. Just try to find some light pinks, things like that. And then we're also going to use some of our browns. Basically, if we look at our seashell, we can see that there's a variety of colors on here. It looks like, oh, it's white, but white with brown and like this like coral pink. So I just like to hold up any of my colors close to it and see which ones match best. And then for some of these browns, I'm gonna just check and see. So I'm gonna grab a few of these. Just pick a few favorites that I like. And then that's gonna be kind of like my palette. So I'm gonna have these as my ones that I pull really quickly from, but I have a few other colors with me as well. Depending on what colors you have on your shells or your stones, anything you found by the beach, you might wanna change your colors. But like this one is like a lot of brown, there's not really any pink in here. And then this one is almost all white, so really there's not a lot of colors. So you'd probably do mostly white, maybe some grays to get us to exactly where we wanna be. So to start, let's set all these down. We just wanna start with our basic white outline of our study. So personally for me, I really like this one. You could decide if you wanted to draw it like looking inside of it. You would start with this like circle-y shape, but I really like the spirals on the outside. So the way I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna put this directly under me so I can see it. And then I'm gonna start drawing this little seashell. And the way I like to start my shapes is I like to basically give myself just a very, very simple outline of where I'm gonna be putting things. And so that I know like the tip of my shell is over here and I'm gonna want it to kind of fit in that shape. So kind of give myself like a little super, super soft outline for where I want all those things to go. And then I know that I want my shell to kind of fit in here and then probably over here. And that's kind of this big chunk in the center. And then this section, like here and here, I'm gonna spiral that off. Then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smallest. And then I can go back, and I always work from left to right because I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, it makes sense to work on the top right and then work your way down. But since I'm right-handed, I'm gonna start over here in this corner, and I'm gonna start by putting these here. So if you can kind of see it, this shape is down here, and I kind of left this as my section to do that. So I'm gonna start by adding in all of those little shapes. This one goes over here. So I'm literally just tracing the shapes that I see. And then this part pokes out. So whenever you have a poke out piece, I always start it further away and then I come to the closer to me and then back further away. And some people will start with like the front of it this way, like that piece comes this way, and then I'm gonna go back. So this piece right here. So you might see like the little tip of it and then it gets bigger and bigger. And then all of this is pretty much very similar white. We're gonna go back in later and add some shading, but I'm gonna do a super light layer of this white, and I'm using the side of my pencil to get that. We want to use the side of our pencil because that's what allows it to blend and shade. If we just like use the tip, we would have all of these really dark marks and it wouldn't blend in. So now that I have that part done, I'm gonna go back and like see which colors I think are there, and I think there's a little bit of this color. So on this specific piece, I'm gonna add in some of this like tannish color. And I don't think it's showing up very much, so I might go back with an even darker color. Like right here around this one that I drew, it's even darker. And we can add some shading on these pieces. Okay, so that's kind of this side over here that I have. And the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through and kind of mark where all of these spines are on this shell so that I know where to keep that space. So I'm gonna kind of go like up the hill, down the hill, up the hill, down the hill. This one is kind of like a V shape. This one over here, perspective changes a little bit. And then this one is a little bump. And then I have another one over here. So that's those ones. Then I'm gonna go back with my darker color and I'm gonna kind of draw this little line right here. And it's gonna go kind of curved. Then on this side, it's also here, but it's more of a curve, so it's gonna be more like that. And it has a darker color. So for that one, I'm gonna go with my, more like this color. I'm gonna kind of go like that. Then I'm gonna mark these spines. So this one's gonna come out. So it's really just slowing down and like looking at each shape, exactly where you see it, and trying to keep track of that. So now I'm like, oh, this one comes out, goes back in. It's pretty short distance between those two. Comes out, goes back in. Comes out, goes back in. So now I have this portion done. Then I'm gonna go back with my pink here. And I can see that when I look at this, oh, the pencil disappears behind this post, like this pokey part. So it's coming underneath. It's gonna like not be able to see that pink line. It's gonna jump out on the other side. So when I do that, I'm gonna go down here. It's gonna go behind, jump over it, land on the other side, and then keep going. There's really only one big spine piece that jumps out here. So that's all I'm gonna focus on. So there that comes out. You can kind of see little bumps right here, and then it goes back in. And that's the furthest edge of this one. Also, I'm noticing when I look at this that this part is like darker, this is gray, and this is white. So what I'm gonna do is just, because I have those colors nearby, I'm gonna put a little bit of that over here so that I know that that's darker than the white. Like I said, this is like a brown piece of paper, so it might not be showing up very much. So you could use like darker pencils to get more of that contrast. That's why I pulled this one out, so that when I get into these little spots like right around this one, there's like that marking of the brown. I can kind of go back in and shade that, and that's gonna create some variety and some depth on our seashell. Same for, it goes like out 1, 2, and then between these ones, there's another dark line right here. So I'm gonna make sure that I have that dark shading here as well. Then over here, it jumps over, it lands on this side, and that's where we get that curve of the shape of our seashell. Just like that. Then over here, there's a bunch of browns, so we're gonna add in all that. And then we're gonna stop here. I'm gonna pause, and I'm gonna go to the top of this and do this top half. So after this like this line right here, then I'm gonna go up here, and I see that this one has the pokey coming here, and then those ones. So I'm gonna draw that. So that's pretty much the highest point of my shell. So I'm gonna go from about here, I'm gonna go up. And there's like kind of this like little shape that I see inside of there, so I'm gonna add that. And then it comes back down, curves around, and then there's another one over here, and it's staying on the same like line, so I can use this line as my guide. This brown line. Okay, so I know that there's gonna be a brown line here, and that there's gonna be a little bump right there before the brown line, and then another little nodule here, and then some more there. And then got my pink again, because I can see there's pink back here. So the actual edge of my shell is not white, it's pink. So I'm gonna add in some of that texture right now. I do see one little white little piece over here, and then this kind of is hiding the rest of that. So this is gonna be the edge of my shell. So that little line that I had before, that's gonna be gone. And I'm just gonna see this. So there's 2 little pieces sticking out over here, and that's that. So this is pretty much done on this side. Now we're gonna focus on, and if you move it too much, you'll get kind of confused because now this piece is over here. We wanna try to keep our stone in the same spot so that it doesn't move and confuse us, which kind of already happened. But anyway, so we're gonna go here. This one has a pokey, this pokey, poke, and it's kind of like jagged, right? It's not a straight, smooth line. Then where this seam goes, there's another jagged poke coming out right there. So that comes up, they're kind of like little mountains. Like, chunk, 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 chunk. Then this one is where my pink line is, so that's gonna be right here. And it's gonna kind of come out, and it's not really gonna go pokey here, it's just gonna be this little line. And it's actually pretty pink, so I could just come back in with this, but I wanted to kind of mark it in white so I could see it easily. Then this one comes out towards us. And like, you have your own pieces, so you don't have to listen to me talk about all this. I'm gonna turn it on to just like super speed mode right now, but I wanted you to get the idea of what I'm doing with each step. So each time I'm looking, pause, look, okay, that's where this line is, because it can get really confusing really fast if you don't slow down and look at each thing. So find little keys on your seashell that remind you of where to start and stop. If I was doing this one, I might do something like this, where I do like, I would draw this shape, the overall big shape of it, and then I would do a big chunk here, little chunk, little chunk, little chunk, and then I would go back in and I would kind of do little guides right here, and I would do it in white. I would say like, okay, I'm gonna draw a white line here, white line here, white line here, and I would go up, over, up, over, up, over, and I would draw that basic form for myself, and then I would fill it in. For this seashell, which I'll probably do these two later, you could choose, are you gonna do the inside or the back? Which one, what do you want, the outside or the inside? But with each of these, this is all a white shell. But what actually you don't realize is that these parts, even though they're white, with the shadow, they become gray. So you would do your white, look at scalloped edges, and then you would go back in with a gray, and you would fill in single line, single line, single line. Do you also see these little marks on here that curve like this? So you would draw some of those in white to kind of give you some boundaries so you know what's going on. This guy, again, I talked about this one before. This one's going to be a little more complicated because it's pretty much all the same color. So you would basically just draw the whole thing in white and then go back in with your gray and draw all those tiny little circles on this guy. This one is really fun because it's a huge, big shape, but you would start by drawing each of the outlines of the shape and then the curves. And I would give myself guidelines by following, okay, this is one line, this is one line. And I would draw some of these nodules, and then I would go back in with the brown and try to follow that pattern because it does follow a pattern. Brown is going this way, and the spines are going this way. Flip it over on the inside, you could do all of this in white and then do your shading. Put some pink in here, add those, and then fill these in. But then you don't have as much of that brown. So this could be kind of an easier one because you would just have to add in that shading. If you see right here where there's the light at, you could do that the whitest, and then everything else could be like a little bit lighter gray. And this is actually would be like a gray as well. So I'm gonna keep going on super speed so you can see me finish this shell, but I'd love to see what you guys do and how yours turn out. So for this portion, you can see that I'm filling in the shell with the basic colors we chose at the beginning, just adding in the highlights and lowlights as I see best on that shell. For this one, I did the highlights first, where the whitest and brightest parts were, and then went in with a darker color to fill those in from the out to the center. This one, I did the whites first, like I said, and then did the darker colors to kind of fill it in and get that shading. Here you can see them complete, and while they don't look exactly like their shells, like they're supposed to be photorealistic, they do look like what I saw and what I thought were interesting on each shell. So the point is to find the things that you like best about each shell and document that. It doesn't have to be realistic, it just has to be yours.